It's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce to you Sanjay Ramabhadran, whose community service, name and fame is well known amongst the mainstream and Indian community. Sanjay is a graduate of prestigious Birla Institute of Technology and Science and Texas A&M University. He is a registered professional engineer. For 20 years, he has provided engineering, management and master planning services to the industry and to the government, where his expertise focused on infrastructure, water and the environment. Notably, he has served on the board of Harris County Metropolitan Transit Authority, was chairman of the board of directors of Leadership Houston, steering committee member of Houston General Plan, senior fellow at the American Leadership Forum, president of Hess Club, president of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Houston, chair of Mayor's International Trade and Development Council for South Asia, president of IPAC, director ISCF, besides holding many other civic offices. Really, I can go on for that, but I'm trying to, abbreviate that. In 2010, he was selected one of the 5 outstanding young Houstonians. In 2011, he was selected as one of the 5 outstanding young Texans. And in 2012, he was honored as one of the 10 outstanding young Americans by the U.S. Junior Chamber of Commerce. In 2010, he represented the United States at the Global Asia 21 Leadership Summit in Jakarta. Sanjay and his wife and their sons live in Houston. His interests include cycling, traveling, and public policy. Now, at this point, of course, I should call him, but since I brought the mic, I'll take this opportunity to also inform all of you of a very nice event which is slated for August 16, and that is when, on the intersection of 6959 Interstate, because the 6959 the new name, and at the intersection of Hillcroft, and we are going to install a Mahatma Gandhi monument. This is in 2011, and also take this opportunity to request various organizations to kindly donate, because we have a big expense to install that and also the recurring expenses. And we are in the process of preparing a brochure where all the names of the donors will be printed. So kindly, whosoever would like to donate, please contact Charlie Patel, ICC President. And with further ado, as I said, I will take this opportunity to request Mr. Sanjay Ramabhadran, the young, smart, and energetic, to come to the podium and share his wisdom with us.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be here.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's a directional mic, I guess. Okay. It's great to join a bunch of engaged civic and business leaders here. You all are here because you all share a passion to make a difference in the community that you live in. Right? So it's not going to be, I think we're going to be learning from each other as to how we can collectively develop our leadership potential and make a difference in the greater Houston region, where it's really our backyard, it's our home now, right? I'm going to try and go through a few topics. There'll be a couple of overlaps. The 3 of us did speak to make sure there's some kind of continuity, if you will. So before I start, let me get a poll. How many of you believe that all leaders are born leaders versus those that believe that these are leadership skills that you can develop and enhance during the course of your life? Those that believe that anybody that's a leader is a born leader, your hands up, please. So you were listening to Parulji, right? That it was development. You were listening to Pinakin when he said that you develop your leadership potential over time. So this is my opinion, right? Everybody in here, everybody out there is a leader in their own right. They're just in a different part of their leadership journey. They're in the process of enhancing, honing their skills from their life experiences through events like this, through their interactions on a daily basis. So we'll try and cover some of those leadership traits. What does it mean to empower leaders in our life? How do you lead by example? And then a little more of a complicated, deep topic, servant leadership, and I'll finish with what I truly believe to be an essential part of the American dream. Let's see if I can figure this out. All right. So what is leadership? You all can read this. Leadership is a function of knowing yourself, having a vision that is well communicated, building trust among colleagues, and taking effective action to realize your own leadership potential. That's from a United Kingdom professor, Warren Dennis. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last thing to say is to say thank you. And everything in between, the leader is a servant. Max Dupree. So essentially what this says is everything in between these two spectrums is leadership. Depends on where you are, what context you are in. I would opine that probably the top one is more towards corporate leadership. And the bottom one is probably more towards community leadership and servant leadership, and everything in between. Leadership traits. Most of this you all came up with when we went through the very first exercise, right? I'm not going to read all of it. Adaptable to situations. I would like to take some credit for that this morning, because during the course of this week, I will apologize for the clutter on my slides. I lost both my home computer and my office computer. So this got put up between the hours of 4 and 6 a.m. this morning. So that's adaptability. I don't really know if it's leadership. It's being alert to the social environment. Ambitious and achievement oriented. I would think that's more towards the first definition rather than the servant leadership. Assertive and confident, diplomatic, decisive and dependable, dominant, energetic, persistent. We heard right off the bat when you ask folks, what do you think of when you say leadership? The first 3 words that came out of this audience were honesty, compassion, and humility. There is a reason why those are in capital, right? Because that's the first thing that we think about when we think of successful leaders. Now, how does one person exhibit all these qualities at the same time? That happens. That every one of us has all of these qualities to varying levels. It's knowing when to tap into what quality, what trait, what characteristic. What does the circumstance require you to tap into? It's all inside us. We're all born with all these qualities. It's how do we enhance these through our life experiences. No, very often, I don't know if I skipped one, I don't think that is. Very often, authority gets mistaken to be leadership. Don't get me wrong. Before you put somebody in a position of authority, they're looking for what kind of leadership qualities they bring to the table. However, just because you have authority doesn't make you a leader. All it gives you is the power to command. It gives you a power to influence. Thoughts? We'll come back to opinion. You can command, you can influence behavior. But if you really rule with a hard stick, if you will, your ability to control opinion starts fading away. Because people start getting a little upset with your style. So what style of leadership you bring makes a big difference. I like to call it the thou shall approach versus the shall we approach. The shall we approach is about building consensus. It's taking people along, convincing them to see why they should do what you're asking them to do, rather than saying, shush, you shall do this, no questions. That works really well with a 3-year-old child. But when you get to be about 30, not so well. To me, that thou shalt is the authoritative leadership and shall we is the empowering leadership. We went through the exercise that gave us an insight into ourselves, and the title on that was accountability and responsibility. Use these words all the time. What do we mean by that? To me, responsibility is something that you can delegate. Accountability, the buck always stops with you. And when you delegate, when you empower your colleagues, keep in mind, always praise in public, criticize in private. When what you delegate becomes successful, give the credit to who did it. When it fails, it's your fault. You can coach, you can mentor, you can course correct, not in public. That's how you earn the trust of your colleagues. That's how people begin to follow you, if you will. So, lots of times, people are told you're accountable for this, that, and the other, except you have authority to change nothing. How many of you all have had that situation happen to you? You're always responsible, you're always for what happened, but this is the way it needs to be done, but if it fails, it's your fault. So it normally doesn't work if you have accountability, but it has to come with a commensurate amount of authority so you can actually influence and make a difference. Okay, you all have been sitting for a while. So the last several leadership conferences I've been to was in a larger room. You were sitting around a table, so you had a little more space, but try and see if you can indulge me. I want you all to go through a quick exercise. You all would please rise. Stretch yourself.
Stand up.
Thank you. Right, see, I figured you all would be ready for this. So, I got a loud voice. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Are you all ready to flex your muscle?
Yes.
Very simple instructions. Turn to the person next to you. No questions on these instructions, and I'll tell you why later. Turn to the person next to you. Put up your right hand. The other person, put up your right hand. Lock yourself in a fist. Okay? All right? No. With the other person.
I need one here.
Yeah, she needs a. If I could ask her, if you could step up for just a second so they can see what it is. Right? I want you all to lock your fist like this, right?
Yeah.
Very simple. Each time your right fist touches the shoulder, you get a point. The most points win. Your time starts now. You got 30 seconds. No questions. Okay. Give yourself a hand. Give yourself a hand. So, what just happened? Anybody want to tell me what just happened?
We relax ourselves.
Okay, you relax yourself. We woke up. Very good. Got your morning exercise. What again? Resistance test. Okay. All right. Okay. So this was a absolutely. So there were three things that happened. Okay. Some of you heard you. Everybody heard you. I said things that I said for a reason. Power of words, right? Said each time your right fist touches a shoulder, you get a point and you win with the most points. So those of you that were doing resistance heard you to mean me. I'm not letting the other guy score a point. Not on my watch. Not happening, okay? Some of you heard you to mean maybe both of us, but I still want to play it safe. I'm hedging my bets. I'm going to let him or her touch my shoulder, but they better let me touch their shoulder right after that. We just want to keep those points kind of equal, just in case. And if it comes pretty close to stop now, I'll touch them one more time. Okay, one extra point. But you did think about you as a team, you as a pair. I didn't see anybody do this, but you could have very easily done this. If I could ask you, please. I don't know if you did that. I could have just done, or I could have just done this, if he allowed me to. That would be no hedging bets. That would be team, team, team all the way. You all did that? I couldn't see that from here. So whoever did that, where you were able to let yourself or the other person just keep scoring points, please stand up. No, not this. You just let them do this. You know what that meant? Give yourself a hand because you had had no expectations. You said, together if we can get the most number of points, we all win. Right? That's truly selfless leadership. So it's the little things. It's how the mind reacts when you hear words. So to me, we've gotten so used today, corporate America, I don't know what you want to call it, any number of things. We've always been taught that winning is everything, right? Did anybody say, no, I don't want to score points? No, everybody wants to score points. So it's competitive leadership. But I can tell you that leadership is as much about being collaborative as it is about being competitive. In fact, I would even opine that it is more about being collaborative than it is about being competitive. Because together you're always stronger than individually. I mean, we've all heard those stories from those that grew up in India, right? Little branches, if you separate it, you can break them. If you put it together, you can't break them. Plain and simple, simple life lessons. The key though is having the judgment to know when to compete and when to collaborate. Sputnik, that was a good time to compete.
Yeah.
Our space shuttle is retired, we need to get supplies to the space station, good time to collaborate. It's about knowing what to do when, right? Let's do another one if we can. Leading by example. All right. So the one thing that bugs most people is double standards. Think about situations in your professional life where you've gone in, your CFO has said, you know, we didn't have a great quarter last quarter, so we're going to institute some austerity measures. We're all going to pull up our socks and work harder to make better profit in the next quarter. And the next month, the CFO, COO, and the CEO get new furniture. Bugs everybody in the office. Because people watch. People watch what's happening. People hear what's being said. Right? I'll tell you this. A manager comes in and says, you know, it's going to be a lot of things that we need to get done over the next 2 weeks. I want everybody to come here early and work late. And he's going to come in late and compensate by leaving early. That's happened to me, I'll tell you this. But it's important to communicate why. Because I've had folks walk up to me and say, man, I see you come into the office at 9 in the morning and you leave at 4:30. I wish I could have your job. And I realized that I've not communicated what it is I was doing. Because what that person doesn't realize is I actually got up at 6, drove downtown for a breakfast meeting, got to the office at 9, left at 4:30, went back downtown and came home at 11 at night. I'm happy to exchange. But if you don't communicate, they don't realize. So I'm going to do one more thing that if you can all indulge me. Right? Just simple. Stand up again, just follow instructions. Pretty easy. Pretty easy. Just follow instructions, all right? Touch your head with your right hand. Touch your head with your right hand. Touch your shoulder with your right hand. Touch your cheeks with your right hand. Touch your head with your right hand. Touch your head with your left hand. Touch your head with your right hand. Nice. Thank you. When we started, we said, do as I say, not as I do. And human beings, you think about your children. You can give them all the advice that you want. Your children will follow your example, not your advice. So everybody, I mean, we kept saying, touch your head with your right hand. But as soon as I started touching my cheek with my right hand, a bunch of y'all started doing it. Because leading by example. People watch what's happening, and if the boss can do it, it must be good enough for the staff member as well. Same thing, if you're asking your staff to do something for you, just be sure you will be willing to do so yourself. Because there isn't a different rule for them or for you. You know, they talk about managers do things right. Leaders do the right things. Read that one more time. Managers do things right, and leaders do the right things. What if you can do both of those? A pretty potent combination, don't you think? Leading by example. Mahatma Gandhi, non-violence, practiced what he preached. He had a ton of interactions with the British where they went out of their way to insult him. If at one time if he had lifted his hand, we would probably still be a colony in India today. It's that little things. The second you violate your own principles and preachings, you lose the right to ask others to follow. The next one's a little bit of a deep dive. I will try and do the best I can. Servant leadership. We talked about the first responsibility is to define reality. Last is to say thank you. In between, be a servant. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi. Life's most urgent question, what are you doing for others? As opposed to what are you doing for yourself? Martin Luther King. So these are from Robert Greenleaf's paper in the 70s. A servant leader is a servant first, not a leader next. It's always a servant first. A leader first is more about authority. It's almost materialistic. It's about your position, your status. I want to be a leader. Are you making sure somebody is following? Because you can be a leader all day long. Following, it's a leader of one. The highest priority for a servant leader is focusing on the needs of others. And by doing so, it actually benefits the individual as well. It is just not that it's not flipped. In the interest of time, I think I should keep moving. Okay. The traditional definition for leadership is how more efficient can you get, how more effective can you get, mostly in commercial terms, right? It's about driving the bottom line. It more than often ignores what the leader himself or herself is feeling. It most certainly ignores what the people that are being led are feeling. You heard in my introduction about being a fellow at the American Leadership Forum. It was founded by Joe Jaworski, who's a Houston, actually Galvestonian if I'm not mistaken, that talks about why servant leadership is important, because we kind of gloss over the need for being a servant leader. Focusing on the group interest versus self-interest. Servant leadership is relationship oriented. It's a creative class. It's constructive. It's collaborative. It's about unleashing human potential. Every one of us has every one of those traits that we listed when we started the day. It's how do you unleash it? You do it by empowering others, by enabling them to break free of obstacles. A lot of times there's organizational obstacles. That's the blame approach. Oh, my organization won't let me do such and such a thing. In other cases, it's really self-imposed. If you really want to do something, you can. If I might indulge the audience, you talked about one of the many things that happened. If the narrow road was really narrow, it means that maybe time for change of a job. I have 2 young kids, 9 and 12, and I quit my job yesterday. Most sane human beings won't do that. I'm not recommending that for anybody. But sometimes, because you find yourself, we kind of, in today's world, it's one activity after another activity after another activity. It's this meeting followed by that meeting. In many cases you do that, so it appears to the rest of the world that I'm really committed to whatever I'm doing. I'm busy. We're in the business of busyness. And that's because we're not willing to look ourselves in the mirror. We're not willing to face ourselves and ask those deep questions, and sometimes that happens only when you're faced with a crisis. Don't let it get to a crisis. Face it before it gets to a crisis. Because that self-realization, hey, we're from the land of the enlightened, right? Once you get to self-realization and you combine it with your leadership skills and unlocking that potential, life is great. 2 minutes? I'm in trouble. Okay. Can I have 3 to 4? I'll finish. Another important leadership skill, negotiation. We'll quickly go through, we've already talked about listening. Most people give importance to communication and decision making. Listening is as important, if not more important. Empathetic listening, understanding where somebody else is coming from. Healing relationships, both your own relationships and the relationships between others. Force multipliers, a huge part of transformation. Awareness, general awareness, self-awareness, knowing where you are. looking at things from a holistic approach, taking into account your morals, your ethics, your power, your values. Just because you have power doesn't allow you to compromise your ethics. Persuasion. That's the convince, collaborate versus coerce, convince versus coerce, persuade versus using authority, position of authority. Conceptualization, a difficult concept, but most of you all in this room serve on some board or the other, as a director or as a trustee. Being able to elevate yourself from the day-to-day operational stuff to see where do I want my organization to be 5 years from now, and what do I need to stop doing today and start doing today. Foresight. I mean, learn from your past, recognize the realities of today, and try to see what the consequence of things you do today will be on the future. Difficult concept, but that's why servant leadership is not easy. Stewardship, holding something in trust, commitment to growth of people. At the end of the day, you're only as strong as your community is. Keep that in mind, right? Building community. None of these are original concepts of mine. These all came from Larry Spears. Building community. That's where if Girish Bhai would indulge me for a couple of minutes. Right? I genuinely believe that an essential part of the American dream is civic engagement. The American dream is about professional success, business success, providing for a better future for your family. Absolutely. Those things have to come first. We learned early on, right? Light a lamp in your house before you light a lamp on the street. But once you've lit a lamp in your house, it is your duty to put your time, talent, and treasure to work for the greater good. After all, Houston, Sugarland, Katy is our backyard too, right? We have an obligation, as I see it, to focus on the greater good. And when you go about doing those things, keep in mind what Abraham Lincoln had to say. Do the things that you do, not for the recognition, but to be worthy of recognition. We all have skills bestowed on us. We all put it to use in our daily work lives. Right? What more can you do with it? Each and every one of you is involved in at least one, if not more, organizations. Everybody. Right? That's because you have that social conscience. What if you can inspire others to roll up the sleeves just like you all have and put their skills to work? How many of you have heard when you go to volunteer on a weeknight evening or on a Saturday morning like today or tomorrow afternoon, there are folks that say, man, why are you going out there to volunteer? You could sit there and watch a football game. Absolutely, and you should. Nothing wrong with that either. Volunteers don't get paid anything. You know, they don't get paid anything not because they're worthless. They don't get paid anything because nobody can pay for it because it's priceless. That's the reason people volunteer. Because when you can do that, when you can leverage your network and work on things you're passionate about, there is no limit. The Greater Houston Partnership has a nice tagline for the city of Houston. Houston, the city of no limits. They're not talking about urban sprawl and the ever-expanding region. They're truly talking about the most diverse city in the country coming together to make a difference. When you do that, there are no limits. Winston Churchill, you make a living by what you do, but you make a life by what you give. And when you give, the giver is the one truly receiving the gift, not the receiver. So think about this. We very often talk about American ingenuity, American innovation as the cornerstones of our global competitiveness, right? You, each and every one of you in this room, you are the Indo-American community's competitive edge. You are the Greater Houston region's competitive edge. So find a way to go put it into practice, because Houston is a microcosm of what the rest of America will look like in about 2 decades, right? So if we don't get connecting communities and serving our backyard right in Houston, we're very soon going to hear the cliche from Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem. Right? It's incumbent on us, each and every one of us, as leaders, to make sure that we engage the rich diversity of talents and perspectives that we have available to us and weave them into the community fabric. Weave the Indo-American community into the mainstream community's fabric. Because when we do that, it will result in changes around town. It will result in policies that will preserve all of our values, and in the process, it will actually enhance our global competitiveness. So, for the NPR fans in the room, this I believe. Each and every one of us has a unique leadership skill and a unique role to play in shaping our collective future. The challenge is for us to identify what we are passionate about, align it with our priorities as individuals, as families, as a community, as a city, as a region. Because we've got many great things going for Houston, but we've got many challenges as well. Education, healthcare, crime, quality of life, list is long. Mahatma Gandhi told us two things that most people, one thing that just about everybody remembers: be the change that you want to see in the world. Lofty, difficult to get your hands around if you ask me. But he also said something else. What you do may seem insignificant, but it is important that you do it. That's because collectively we can come together, solve those problems, and when we do that, we would not have just lived the American dream, but we will preserve it for generations to come. So enjoy your leadership journey, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.